activities, right? So people, through the hazards that they have identified, determine whether or not they are going to engage in activities in regards to environmental activities. And the last one is the emotional response. So we understand that people's emotional response is determined by their community values, right? So the emotional response, for example, a community such as the low-lying areas like the Shire, the Lower Shire, or Chikwawa and the Sandi, right? What are the people's perception, emotional responses towards environmental challenges? You find that people there generally, we say that anazolo, right? Could it's a flooding area. So therefore, their emotional responses is, we can call it neutral. They don't really mind about the issues that it's a disastrous place. They have become more resilient. And furthermore, we were looking at the different types of attitudes. We identified three specific different types of attitudes. We said that even although a person can have a perception towards the environment that is influenced by their community, but they are further influenced by an attitude that is coming from the knowledge that they have, right, towards environmental issues. So we identified three major attitudes. The first one is the egoistic attitude, which clarifies that individuals will have environmental attitudes in regards to trying to change the environmental factors because of the environmental challenges that they have identified, because they specifically affect them. So we gave an example of people who say, I want to engage in environmentally sustainable management techniques because I don't want to breathe dirty air, right? Because I heard that dirty air causes cancer to people and I don't want to get cancer, right? That's an egoistic attitude. So you find that an individual who is egoistic is, it would be an individual where, when you're looking at environmental responsible behavior, if it's, for example, waste management, if you are living in a community, they are most likely to just engage in that waste management, but just focusing on themselves as opposed to a community level, right? And then we have the second, which is the altruistic. We identified as altruistic people as those that are concerned about other people other than themselves, which include their friends, their family, their community, the future generation of humanity. So these people will be concerned about environmental challenges because they are looking at what is happening to the future of mankind. So altruism is within the technocentric ideology that we discussed in the first lesson, right? And then finally, the biospheric concern. So the biospheric concern or biospheric attitude is within the measures of an individual being concerned about the environment because they are looking at the life force of the whole world, right? The all living creatures, the plants, the animals, including the whole ecosystem. Understanding the fact that the environmental relationship between human beings and the environment looks at we can say, the reciprocal relationship between the inputs that we get from the environment, right? So these are the three key attitudes, environmental attitudes. So we were looking at the human factor and environmental impact assessment. That's where we ended on. We're looking at unit 3, which is human factor and environmental impact assessment. So we're focusing on the human factor. We're saying it's a human factor because we're determining how people make decisions in terms of environmental responsible behavior. So understanding that people as being part of the environment, our well-being is leaning towards the environment being healthy, right? Because we rely on a healthy environment for us to be healthy because of various minerals that are available on Earth, and also economic development. So this implies connections, systems, and root causes of degrading the environment. So we looked at specific theories. We're looking at these theories as those that present a systematic way to understand behavior. we're trying to determine the systematic way in which we can understand people's behavior in regards to environmental issues. So we determine that these are interrelated concepts. They are interrelated concepts that will determine favorable factors to ensure human behaviors in environmental preservation. We identified 6 major theories, right? The first, which is the primitive theories, which houses behavioral change model first. The second, environmentally responsible behavior model. And yes, yes, yes. So that's the first one, eh? And it houses 3, which is the behavior change model. The second is environmentally responsible behavior model. Environmentally responsible behavior. Environmentally responsible behavior model. And the last one on the primitive models is reasoned or responsible action theory. Action theory. That is within primitive models, okay? Then we have the second, which is planned behavior theory. The third is environmental citizenship model. Planned behavior theory. And environmental citizenship model. Yes. And then model of human interaction with the environment. Number 4. Yes. 5 is the value belief norm theory of environmentalism. The value belief norm theory of environmentalism. And the final one is model of diffusion and health belief theory. Of diffusion and health belief theory. That is 6, right? Okay. Belief theory. So these are theories under human factor information. Human factor, yes, human factors in environmental impact assessment. Impact assessment. Okay. Okay, so looking at the primitive models, right, which is the first model and houses 3 other models in it, right? The primitive models are called primitive because they are based on assumptions, okay? That's why they are called primitive. They are based on assumptions rather than rigorous experiments. So these models are founded on the assumption that educating the public on various ecological and environmental issues could alter human behavior. Keyword there is could, it? Yes, it could alter because it's an assumption that if people gain knowledge about the issues of the environment, how they affect the environment with the various activities, they are most likely to change their behavioral patterns, right? So the first within the primitive model is the behavioral change model, which we have said, right? The behavior change model was directly associated with the supposition that if people were better informed, they would become more aware of environmental problems and consequences. So the basic factor of behavior change model is just an assumption to say if people gain knowledge, right, of what is happening around them, of what activities that they do that affect the issues that they have highlighted, they have identified. For example, we are looking at the concept of climate change right now, or tugumati kusintha wanyema, right? So from a Malawian perspective, how are people informed of their responsibilities with the issue of climate change, right? Firstly, and how are people going to respond to the various issues that have been highlighted in regards to climate change? So while there are many other similar models that we are going to be discussing, the key factor with a behavior change model, you should understand that it is the basis of all the models that we are going to discuss, okay? It is the basis of all the models that we are going to discuss, because all the models are linking knowledge to attitudes and attitudes to behavior, okay? So the behavior model, through simplistic view, provides a basis for consideration of possible relationship between environmental knowledge, environmental awareness and attitudes, and how this can translate to action or an inaction. So this is an important factor when you're looking at the knowledge base. We go back to the dimensions. We say that the dimensions are the worldview, right? Which will transcend to concern and then commitment, right? So this regulates the fact that having knowledge of a specific element of environmental issues goes not beyond the community view, but also the world view. So the world view determines, Kuti, how do you think people see or view about environmental issues, right? So the example would be, we said the United States, right? That have been highlighted as the one country that is emitting the highest amount of greenhouse gases. So if you gain knowledge of environmental issues as a person, your level of concern is coming from what you think other countries are doing, right? So that is your worldview. So this is going to determine whether or not the knowledge that you gain on environmental issues, right, that raises your awareness and also influences your attitude, is going to translate to an action or an inaction. Because a person can have knowledge, right, but then and develop an attitude, either a positive attitude towards environmental issues, but they can choose to be inactive, right? Because you are looking at the other associating factors to a person acting on the knowledge that they have, which we'll be discussing further. The second is the theory of environmentally responsible behavior, ERB. So the model argues that possessing an intention to act is a major factor influencing ERB. You can have the knowledge, right? Develop a positive attitude, but that positive attitude must translate to an intention to act. So the model of environmental responsible behavior indicates that there are the following variables, okay? The first variable in the ERB is intention to act. The second variable is the locus of control. So the locus of control means an internalized sense of personal control over events over one's life. Should I proceed? The attitudes, that's the third. Sense of personal responsibility, which is the fourth. And the last is knowledge. Note that they are not necessarily in order, okay, of what occurs. Those are, I've just highlighted the variables that are present. So it suggests that whether a person would adopt a behavior or not is within these variables. So the representation of the ERB considers major variables that play in the process of an individual to adopt environmentally responsible behavior. So according to the model, the internal control center, right? Is there a marker here? I didn't bring my marker. There isn't. Thanks. So the locus of control The locus of control is a center that has a considerable impact on the intention of acting, right? Locus of control has a considerable impact on intention to act, right? Why is it has a considerable impact on intention to act? Because we are saying a locus of control is that an internal sense of an individual to say they have control over things, right? So if they feel that they have control over things, that is going to determine whether or not they are going to have an intention to act. Okay. So the other factor that we talked about is knowledge, right? So here we have knowledge. So an individual, actually that arrow is supposed to be going down. An individual is going to gain knowledge on environmentally responsible behavior. That goes to their locus of control, right? So the attitudes of an individual and their intentions to act are within their locus of control. So the authors have said that the control center directly affects an individual's attitudes and can lead to improved intention of acting and improved behavior. The control center has got direct effects of an individual's attitudes and can lead to an improved intention of acting and improved behavior. So that's the theory concentrates more on existing interactions between parameters that influences a person's behavior. So we are saying interacting parameters, eh? So the interacting parameters would be the attitudes, right, that have been influenced by their intention, by the locus of control, and also the knowledge of the knowledge of environmental issues. So we say that the locus of control is directly related to the intention to act, right? And furthermore, the locus of control determines attitudes and responsible personal responsibility. The locus of control is going to determine attitudes and personal responsibility. So when you're looking at the locus of control, we are saying that it is that intent of that inner sense of having a control over issues. So when you feel that you have control over issues, you are either going to develop a positive or negative attitude, right? Because you feel like it, or you can develop a neutral attitude, right? And then locus of control also determines personal responsibility. So you have, through the attitude, say, you know what, I feel like environmental issues are it's something that we all must participate in, right? And I'm very concerned about environmental issues. For example, waste management. Right? But then you have this personal responsibility. So if you are in a setting like this, you feel that, for example, the bin ijaza, right? And then you know that there's a person who empties that bin. And you feel like, even though you want to throw something in there, right? It's not within your responsibility. Go and tell that person who it becomes empty, so ungo unjiga memu jamu kuti kazita iga zili benchibe. So it is within the personal responsibility, because you feel like, do I have control over this issue, and is it my personal responsibility or responsibility of others, right? And furthermore, this the attitude, positive or negative, and personal responsibility is going to determine environmentally responsible behavior. I don't know if that's making sense. If you need me to clarify before we move forward. Right? Okay. The third in the primitive models is the reasoned or responsible action theory. the reasoned or responsible action theory. So this theory assumes that human behavior is grounded on rational thought. It's true, right? For us to behave in the way that we do, right? You sort of make a cost-benefit analysis. So it's based on rational thought, and the model uses the principle of compatibility, which predicts attitudes and reflect behavior, which again is true. For an individual to develop attitudes that is going to translate in positive behavior, it is coming from compatibility, right? Aware your internal values. Is it within the range of what that particular issue is talking about, which here you are looking at environmental issues. So the theory stipulates that the intention of acting has direct effect on behavior. You develop an attitude, but the intention of acting is going to determine whether or not you are going to engage in environmentally responsible behavior. So note there that it is coming from this very diagram that I was showing. So these attitudes are shaped by subjective norms, okay? They are shaped by subjective norms and beliefs, situational factors that influence the variables. Should I proceed? Okay. So we are saying, here we have intention to act, right? And it's going to influence environmentally responsible behavior. So which is the reasoned action, right? So we are saying it's reasoned action because it is going beyond the locus of control. So what the reasoned action is saying is that for you to develop an attitude, either a positive attitude towards something, yet whether you have knowledge or not, it's coming from your personal values, right? Values and beliefs, and also other factors. So those would be the surrounding factors, such as your peers, right? The environment that you, or maybe the community that you live in. So these factors, surrounding factors, and also your personal values and belief is going to determine the attitude that you have towards environmentally responsible behavior, right? And further, the attitudes are going to translate to intention to act. So the intention to act is coming from those norms or those personal values and beliefs and other associating factors which develop an attitude and further transcends to intention of acting and furthermore create a behavior of reasoned action. Any questions? Okay. So now we have the theory of planned action, right? Sorry? Oh, sorry. Yes, the theory of planned behavior. The theory of planned behavior. That's the second. So a planned behavior theory is growing out of the theory of reasoned action. It's growing out of the theory of reasoned action. So this theory suggests that human behavior is influenced by three belief constructs. Belief about the consequences. For an individual to have the belief that they have, for an individual to engage in behavior, they are influenced by three belief constructs. The first is the belief about consequences. What are the consequences of environmentally, of let's say, non-waste management, right? The second is expectation of others. Expectation of others. Mu community memakhala aliyense bini yake amada akatayataya ama akaika panja paja utasita azatenge. So you are more likely to do that because that's what the community is doing, right? And the last one is other things that may support or prevent the behavior. Other things that may support or prevent the behavior. So the other things that may support or prevent behavior would be maybe your accessibility to resources, right? Muna bini yosonga wanise ugura, right? You are looking at maybe your previous experiences, right? So your previous experiences would be kumene majogira mumagumba dzala, right? So ngakhale unabwera good yonoti anthu amagasiya zinthu asiti amatenga umapitiza bekhalidwe lako lotani lokumba dzala, right? Kapena maybe compost kapena zinthu zina ngati zimaotchedwa umangootcha sumakataya zinthu. So a strong premise of this theory is that at the conceptual level, it links amongst the influences on behavior and their effects are captured through one component of the model or the relationship in the model. So one component of the model causes an effect to the other. So it's just a succeeding effect, right? The application of this model is to study, the model provides further explanation into the connection between knowledge, attitudes, behavior intention, and actual behavior as looking at the influence of waste management practices. So knowledge is a specific component in the model, but the attitudes are functions of a belief, okay? In this model, the differences between the environmentally responsible behavior and this one, or we can say the primitive models, and this one is that knowledge is a function of belief, okay? Knowledge ukuzokana nayo, but then for you to gain or to improve that level of knowledge, it is within your belief structures, right? Okay, so we are giving an example there of waste management, which I said you can have knowledge of saying within your community factors, which is an influence of others, right? What people expect of you. To say zinthu tikakota taya bini timagayika kandi panja bageti kunora asset as a thing. But then within your values, you believe that household waste, for example, scraps and the food waste timavanga composted. So that is going to determine whether or not you are going to engage in behavior that is associated with at the community level. So since in this context we are looking at specific behavior, right? We are looking at the specific behavior. The specific behavior that is coming from the knowledge that you gained. For instance, when a person understands that they have control of a situation, their behavior intention reflects understanding of that belief. Okay? Should I proceed? Okay. And then the third is the environmental citizenship model, right? Environmental citizenship model. This is a very interesting model or theory within the rest of the models because it's looking at succession of information, right? The information that you're gaining now is coming from, you are adding on the knowledge that you gained from childhood, right? From the socialization of your family and so on. So this is what this environmental citizenship model talks about. It's looking at the succession of knowledge in regards to environmentally responsible behavior. So this model proposes 3 stages of educational involvement. It involves 3 stages of educational involvement. So the first is the exposure. Mwangodziwa kumene zinthu, right? Environmental responsible behavior. You just learned this information, right? And the second stage is real involvement. Real involvement. And then the last is the empowerment. Okay, the empowerment stage. So the environmental citizenship model has the variables grouped according to which level of knowledge that you are. Okay, it has those variables grouped according to the level of knowledge. So these are the entry level, as I was saying, suggests that you have, because of the knowledge that you gain, the small knowledge that you gain at an entry level, it is going to create a sense of a general sensitivity towards knowledge of the environment. Okay, so you just have a general sensitivity. Oh, kanti maine akuti tizipanga chonche tizitazinyala kapena ngati zinthu zokuti zimatha kuwola titha kungozisiya kuti ziwolerane tipange manure, right? So that just creates a sensitivity for you. So the major variable is the environmental sensitivity at entry level, right? And we have minor variables, which is knowledge of the ecology. So the knowledge of the ecology would determine, such as the breakdown of various factors in the environment, and also issues such as attitude towards pollution, technology, and economics. So you just gain general knowledge at the beginning. That is the entry level. And the second is the ownership level. You have gained the knowledge, you have sort of gained some environmental sensitivity, but then now on the ownership level you have in-depth knowledge, which is where we are here, right? In-depth knowledge. And in-depth knowledge is going to respond or transcend to personal commitment. You have gained the knowledge, you understand the concepts of the ecology, and you have gained attitudes on the pollution and so on, and you have personal investment in issues that concern the environment. This includes consequences of behavior and resolution to challenges of environmental issues. So having knowledge of consequences would know if I don't maybe treat my water, the consequences, and so on. You understand the consequences of saying ultimately kukumba njigo akamakumba njigo. So they have a mapping system out ajona kuti akamakumba mijigo isakhayo noti kuyandika ndi malo amene anthu sanakumba zimbuzi fazi uthanda zoti madzi aja azibwera utani onongeka. So you are looking at these consequences, you understand. So through this environmental responsible behavior, that's why in the system of water management we might know how environmental science is it, because they understand these concepts. And furthermore, people have personal commitments to issues that have been caused because of environmental issues. And the last one is empowerment variable. So the empowerment variable, yes, you have gained the knowledge from the entry level, you have gained a sense of investment towards environmental issues, but empowerment variable means knowledge is just knowledge, but then you can only be empowered if you have skills, right, to sort of address the various environmental issues. So an individual through knowledge gains skills, right, and gains environmental action strategies. So not just skills, but also environmental action strategies. So this is through the locus of control, right? Through the locus of control, you are able to say, I have these positive attitudes and I have the intention of acting, right? And for me to act, it means I need to gain relevant skills according to these environmental challenges that that are prevalent in my society. So, and furthermore, you gain further in-depth knowledge about issues. So this in empowerment variable, you're looking at various environmental sustainability issues, such as you find people that talk about carbon footprint, they talk about recycling, they talk about waste management, they talk about all these various issues because they are looking at them as being within their locus of control. They can control them and they have given themselves the capacity to have knowledge and also skills to address these environmental action strategies. Any questions before I proceed? It's making sense? Okay. So we have the model of human interaction with the environment. The model of human interaction with the environment. So you remember that model that we were talking about in the lesson before this one? We did that, I think, in class 3 or 2, okay, where we are looking at the relationship between the environment, human environmental interaction. That's what we said. So we said this is a closed system where this is the environment, right? And we said here we have the economy, right, which takes inputs or resources from the environment, right? The natural gas, agricultural proceeds, and so on. So the economy produces what? goods and services, right? Goods and services for people here. So that these would be the households. So we said the economy produces industrial waste, waste that goes into the environment again, right? And households also produce household waste. And then, because human beings are generally responsible, they understand the implications of this environmental waste. We said they do what? Recycling, Yes. And uh, recycling goes back into the environment. So we are looking at this. When I'm explaining the model of human interaction with the environment, that is the picture that you need to have in mind. So the model of human interaction with the environment describes four interactions between human activity and the environment. The first one is the source. So the source there is within the inputs, right? Where as human beings, we understand that our source is the environment, where we drive our minerals, our food, fibers for economic activity, right? That is the source. And the second is the sink. So natural resources are transformed by the industrial activity to produce goods and services, right? And energy services that are used to disseminate, and they cause a depletion of the resources, right? So it is within, it is here, right? This element here, where we have taken the sink is the economy has produced final goods and services, right? And we have created waste money, waste that is the industrial waste here and the household waste. So we understand that the environment acts as a sink, right? And because the environment is acts as a sink, we do recycling. And we have the life support. So the Earth's ecosystem, if it's unmanaged, it provides detrimental problems to human beings, right? So through this life support, we understand that it is essential for us to balance our, we can say, extraction of resources, right? Because we understand that we need to balance this extraction of resources firstly, because the whole environment is working together to sort of we can say interchanging of resources, right? We talked about the recycling there from the sink, where human beings will take inputs from the environment to produce goods and services, but then we, after producing household waste, that recycling that we do, particularly composting it brings back resources, or we can say nutrients, to the environment, which is an essential factor when you're looking at life support. It's a reciprocal relationship. Another very good example of a reciprocal relationship is looking at the relationship between human beings and trees. Trees produce oxygen for us. We produce carbon dioxide when we breathe out for them, right? So you are looking at this relationship, a life support of sustenance between various ecological factors. And the last one is the impact of on human welfare. The impact on human welfare. So the impact of human welfare is looking at the environmental challenges that occur and affect human beings. So they are coming from the waste that we do and causing issues such as the greenhouse gases, overheating, pollution, and so on. So the model expresses how human activities bear imprint on the environment. And while this model concerns itself with entirety of human activities, knowledge of interacting variables in the model enhances understanding of possible outcomes of different behaviors within the environment. So we are looking at possible outcomes of different behavior. For example, the recycling, right? How does recycling in turn change the effects within the environment, as opposed to the environmental technological factors such as the industries installing green technology to reduce their carbon footprints. So you are looking at different people within the environment, the industries, the people within their individual actions that reflect upon environmental issues. Any questions? Okay. Number 5, we have the value, belief, norm theory. The value, belief, norm theory. So the value, belief, norm theory is very interesting because it's looking at all the aspects that we have looked at in this module, right? The human interaction, which includes the human perceptions as well as the attitudes. So we said the attitudes include biospheric, altruistic, and egoistic, right? So these are the values. Which are determined by which values determine the attitudes. So we identified the fact that for people to have their values, right? The values are the ones that determine whether they have biospheric, altruistic, or egoistic, right? Attitudes. A good example would be, again, the egoistic. If you have your values are very individualistic, your attitudes towards uh, global issues, right? Community issues are going to be egoistic because you're looking at only the challenges that affect you, right? And these values are further create an assessment or a determination of ecological worldview. Ecological worldview. So we said Kuti, the worldview is a dimension, right? It's a dimension of perception, environmental perception. So we have the worldview, we have the concern, and then we have the commitment. So this biospheric, altruistic, or egoistic transcend to ecological worldview, where if we give an example to say, how do we have egoistic attitudes towards the environment? It means the worldview of ecological issues is going to be surrounding only personal benefits of the environment. Eh? So people's actions, specific actions, are going to be only directed towards personal benefit, and it's going to affect the rest of the environmental issues. Eh? So through these attitudes, you find that there sort of has to be a balance. People who are biospheric, right? People who have altruistic attitudes. Yes. Oh, okay, fine. Attitudes, and also egoistic attitudes. And then through this ecological worldview, it creates a belief system. So here we have belief systems. So what this is adverse reactions or consequences to action, right? You have these attitudes, and it determines the ecological worldview of the various perspectives within the environment. And this creates a belief system for you. What are the adverse reactions or consequences to your action or inaction? Okay? Your adverse reactions or consequences to your action or your inaction. For example, e.g., emission of greenhouse gases. Greenhouse gases. So right now, a lot of developed countries are talking about reducing their carbon footprint, right? Because it's coming from knowing, sort of having a altruistic and also biocentric attitude. that is created an ecological worldview to understand that generally the whole world is going to be affected. And having understood these affection of the effects that are going to come to the world, it creates a belief system where you are looking at the consequences of action or inaction. So these consequences would be, what are the consequences of increasing greenhouse gases, or what are the consequences if we don't reduce the greenhouse gas emission. So having understood the perceived or having understood the consequences attached to action or inaction is going to determine the sense of obligation that you have, right? So the obligation would be within the aspect of pro-environmental action, right? So the pro-environmental action is grouped into, firstly, activism. The second is non-activist public sphere behavior. The third is the private sphere behavior. And the last is behaviors in the organization. So activism is just generally those that engage in a lot of activities to ensure that a lot of the community gain awareness of environmental issues, right? And the non-activist public sphere behaviors include right? You are going to engage in activities that are environmentally responsible just on a personal level, right? You don't have to maybe make a, for example, simunga ngotaya zinyavali pose weka umango bito ngotaya kandi mubini munja, and maybe that for you that translates to say it sets an example for people, right? And we have the private sphere behaviors. So it will be those people who engage in pro-environmental actions within their private sphere. So ngakhale kuli bi anthu amene akwaona, right? They are going to compost, they are going to recycle, and so on. And behaviors in the organization. So you are looking at assimilation of organization in pro-environmental actions. So every institution looks at how it addresses waste management and so on. So you are looking at these issues in regards to behaviors of pro-environmental behavior. Yes. Oh, so the value belief theory discusses the various interactions within environmental factors. So it's looking at all the variables that we have discussed. When you look at it, it's looking at the dimensions of perception, it's looking at the attitudes, and it's also looking at the elements that we discussed in the primitive models, as well as the reasoned action theory, right? Looking at how belief systems are a primary factor in determining whether there's going to be action or inaction. So the value belief theory is more like an encompassing theory of all the other models that we have discussed. And the value belief norm theory offers, first of all, a good account of the causes of the general predisposition towards pro-environmental behavior. So all the good, it's looking at the good account, looking at all the factors related to pro-environmental behavior. And secondly, it depends on a broad range of causal factors both general and specific behavior. Number 6 is diffusion model and health belief theory. Diffusion model and health belief theory. So Everett Rogers introduced the concept of the diffusion model. So the theory looks at the changes spread in population through normal distribution of willingness to accept new ideas. So what this means is just the diffusion of environmentally responsible behavior, right? Environmentally responsible behavior, or the diffusion of environmental attitudes towards a community. So we said we understand that the concept of diffusion is that it moves from high concentration to low concentration, right? But the only way that this is going to occur is if the community is willing to accept new ideas. That is the primary concept of the diffusion model, right? Are they willing to accept the new ideas? So, for example, you are looking at the agricultural patterns of, for example, burning of the rest of the byproducts of agricultural when you're harvesting it. So now through the new knowledge of saying we want to bring back nutrients into the garden or the farms, people should just be burying the dead parts of the plants to sort of bring back nutrients, right? But then a community can only respond to that if they are willing, right? They are willing to accept this new idea, even although they have identified the fact that wocha mabesi kuja munda mwina kupangisa kuti nthaka ija izije pamhamvu, but then they can only be willing, they can only change if they are willing to accept this new idea. So at the level of the individual, the behavior adaptation occurs through stages of knowledge. So the stages of knowledge include persuasion, right? The second, so alangiza za ulimi ache amabwera to sort of persuade people in the communities on new agricultural models that are environmentally sustainable, right? And therefore, through persuasion, people make a decision. Is this good or relevant for me, right? And through this decision, they make implementation, right? And furthermore, they make a confirmation. So several studies have considered and applied the diffusion model. The model is popularized with the general public, looking at how people look at the differences in the community activities and engage or accept new knowledge related to what is mostly relevant for them. Okay? People can only accept new knowledge if they find or if they have found that it is more relevant to them. Sijoncho. So according to the diffusion model, behaviors are affected across the community through change agents. So we are saying that behaviors are affected across a community through change agents, where they can be individuals who are what we call right now influencers, right? So these are the change agents. So because of these people, a community is more likely to engage in environmentally responsible behavior because they are the ones that the community models or admires as the one, or admires that they are individuals who are proactive in environmentally sustainable mechanisms. And there are 4 elements that would affect a change agent's own behavior. So the first element that affects a change agent's own behavior is involvement. The second is social support. So, and the third is response information. And the last is intrinsic control. So when you're looking at these change agents, for someone to influence another person, it is first of all within your disposition to see that it is within my ability to influence that change that I'm saying. So it looks at the, first of all, involvement of that individual in the specific environmental responsible behavior. And second, the social support. The social support influences whether that change agent is going to continue, right, trying to engage the rest of the community. And the third, the response information. What is the information or not feedback that they are getting from the community in terms of this new information that is being popularized? And the last is the intrinsic control, where a change agent determines whether or not they have control over the variables that are being discussed, right? So what this means is, as an influencer, for example, you are promoting something, right? If you are, let's say, promoting a brand, but there are certain things about that particular brand or that particular activity that are not within your levels of control, right? For example, company changati, let's say kupanga kandizovala, kumene kumapangidwa zovala sukhala, right? Ndiye chinthu chachitobwera unoti mwina quality ndi zimene omanena zotani zosiyana. So it is within your intrinsic control. So when you are looking at environmentally responsible behavior, you are looking at activities that have been recommended by, let's say, developed countries. Right? So you as a change agent, imabwera, let's say, project, right? And uses you as a change agent to influence others. Komano zintu zimene zikunena zija ngakhale where you are trying to promote, most of those things, they were not made, we can say you were not part of the decision making in terms of the activities, right? So it would be the mechanisms on, for example, if they say kunena kuti mugamba kutani kudzala chimanga, let's say this three sisters method, intercropping, maloti ndi 1 acre muthoza kulola mwina mabagi 30 achimanga, right? Generally, as a person who is a change agent, you don't have control of something like this, even although it's something that people would expect, but you won't have control of the associating factors that are going to translate to, let's say, kukolola mabagi 30 achimanga, mukola mabagi 30 achimanga, mukola ma 5 aujeni achani anyemba, muzakhala ndi maungu mwina odzaza mwakuti, so you don't have control over this because there are various associating factors in this result that is expected. So this model is important because it brings the ability to identify and access environmental literacy, inducing information possessed by individuals and respect to the content, sources, quality, and the effects, which has been structured in related to the social context. This model is important because it looks at the social context when they are providing environmental responsible information. And the last half of this model is the health belief theory. So the health belief theory looks at how beliefs help to shape behavior. So beliefs are not fixed individual characteristics. We know that, a person can have a belief of something, but they can change those beliefs based on primary socializing agents, right? Inuyo kwana nakuphunzitsani khaidwe lina mwabwera usukulu mwazakumana ndi anzanu mwasinthaso, muzayamba ntchito muzatani muzasinthaso. You move out of the country, you are going to change, right? So the health belief system model focuses on two aspects of an individual's view of health and behavior. The views are the threat perceptions and behavioral evaluation. The threat perceptions and behavioral evaluation. So the threat perception or a perceived risk, when you feel that there is a high risk of you maybe experiencing a health hazard, right? And you make an evaluation on what behaviors are going to facilitate or encourage you having a high risk of that particular health hazard, is going to determine whether or not you are going to respond in environmentally responsible behavior. And this anticipation, this is founded on a perceived susceptibility to an illness and anticipated severity of the consequences such as illness. So the health belief model submits that anytime there's an increase in an individual's assessment level of risk, so you are looking at increasing your assessments on those risks that you have identified, there's also an increase in the likelihood that the individual will adapt the recommended preventative behavior. So this health belief theory, this looks at elements such as, particularly it's used when they are trying to make communication on communicable diseases, right? So communicable diseases that may